It's too cruel, isn't it? That's where it stopped. And anything that happens after that, we can't be sure of. We can be sure it would have been different had he lived to finish it, but that's where he stopped. Right in the middle of a sentence, right in the middle of a thought. He just finishes one idea, and he's just getting going to go somewhere else, and he's silenced, just like that. It's so unresolved. And that's why when you see the statue that they created, it really does have that impression. It's one of the most beautiful statues to commemorate exactly this emotion that I can think of. I just can't imagine bettering it. It's something that's broken off. Mozart left the Requiem in a condition that's very much like a broken column. You can probably figure out how to put the rest of the column in place, but it's not Mozart after this. And when you hear the Requiem after this, it still is a really affecting piece. And it's played all the time in its entirety. And yet, you can't help but to say, geez, I wonder if he would have brought that back. I wonder if it really would have worked out this way, if he had just had more time. I mean, the movements that are intact have, for the most part, such a fabulous sense of collision, of emotions, collisions of concepts. There's so much to learn in the way that the language is shifted. It's not Mozart on autopilot at all. And you can hear the figuration of this Lacrimosa is going someplace different. There's nothing ordinary about this, right? Nothing is ordinary. Every interval seems strange and weirded out and like just bent enough that you can't imagine. If you had to predict the next note, you'd have a hard time doing it. And yet when you hear the next note that he supplies, it sounds perfectly logical, like it was the only possible note that could ever have been there. And that's why when you cut it off in bar 9 and now you say, what's the next note? You pity that poor old guy Süssmayr. Because now what do you do? He just got this phrase started. Where would he have taken it? Well, good luck with that, right? That's a task you'd be a fool to try to undertake. And yet they did it for very noble reason. They wanted to do it for practical reasons so that they would have a work to play that would be representative at least of something worth doing. So it's a very, very, very noble idea. What we've tried to do then today, and I do want to do a little bit of reviewing before we leave, because the last chapter in Maynard Solomon's book will be very useful in kind of getting your mind around the final. What I want to do is just think through all of these different ways that there were mythologies created around Mozart's death, most of which, while I have some sense of why they were appealing as mythologies, most of which are less interesting, in my view, than the real way it went down. I mean, everything I learn about it or discover about it or that others discover about it and share seems more profound and just simply more cool than any of the mythologies. Why would it need to be raining on the day that they took the casket, given what we know about where they took the casket and all that went down, right? Or potentially could have gone down there. Really, really, really fascinating stuff. Well worth some meditation. And please go there. I don't say you have to go there this week, but get there, And when you get there, you're going to be so happy because it really is one of the few things that you just couldn't oversell. I told you when I went to Salzburg, I was really terrified that they'd made it into Mozart Disney or something like that. And that would have been so disappointing. And they probably did, and there's just so much Mozart there that even with Disneyland, it was still pretty cool to be around it. But they're very intense. You can't take pictures. You can't, do anything like that in a Mozart museum. In a Schubert museum, the guy brings a light over so I can take pictures. This stuff. I'm trying to document and find the maps that show the roadways that Schubert would have learned, and I just kind of kept taking it. He goes, grabs the thing, pulls it over, and there it is. Go ahead, take the pictures. It's such a different attitude. But Mozart, again, is so popular that people would trash everything if they did that. And Schubert, who knows him, right? Nobody goes there, so just me, right? But this place is so far out of the way that it's really untouched. And so it really is a delight if you go there. My wife is still talking about it, because not even so much the Mozart, just the other stuff that's there is so powerful. It's a very, very beautiful setting and a very beautiful place. I want to look for a minute at reviewing for the final exam. And one way to do that is to look at the back of this page of Mozart Requiem, because I do have some final exam questions here that will help you to organize your notes and to get things together. I don't know if I'll ask all of those questions. I might ask others also. But these, I think, are good questions that sketch our time primarily since the midterm and the things that we've done. We've done Abduction from the Siriglio. We looked at Marriage of Figaro. We looked at Don Giovanni. We looked at the Symphony in G minor K550. I resisted the comparison to the earlier G minor symphony only because that's a long time ago. But boy, I tell you, it's hard to resist it because there is so much change from the early G minor symphony to the later G minor symphony. And Requiem Mass and the Magic Flute. These are the primary pieces that we did, and I'm pretty impressed with that. I think you did a good job in starting to absorb that. It's a lot of material, it's a lot of music, but it is Mozart. And you can never go wrong in any time that you spend learning Mozart, especially probably the operas where, so much of his style comes from that world. So take a look at that. Also, reread chapter 32. It's very insightful in bringing back, I think, and harmonizing many things that we've talked about these operas. There's a sense of strangeness in Mozart's late operas. And Maynard Solomon tries to fathom it to some extent. What does it mean when Don Giovanni refuses to repent and is dragged to hell? Maynard Solomon proposes the following. Look, this guy has lied to everybody his entire life. He lies to every woman he meets. He lies about, Leporello being the rapist. He lies about everything. Why doesn't he just lie to the commendador and say, yeah, repent, you got me. I'm a changed man. The Count repents. He asks for forgiveness. Contessa pardona, right? He asks for forgiveness. It's a beautiful scene. Here's the king of all liars. Why doesn't he just lie? It's a great question, and we don't have a very good answer for that. What does it mean that he doesn't? Is he suddenly truthful? Hard to believe, right? This is the kind of stuff we want to start thinking about in his operas, and there's no easy answer to this. What are we supposed to make of the Magic Flute when the mother who says that her daughter's been kidnapped, suddenly we find out that the guy is really the good guy? But doesn't he kidnap the daughter still? And isn't she in the process of would have been raped by Monostatos had, he not been interrupted twice by Papageno? What are we supposed to make out of that? The Countess, right, Susanna in Marriage of Figaro, is worried that the Count will sexually violate her. What's all this vulnerability, this sexual intrigue in these operas, right? It's all over the place. Zerlina being chased by the Count. Donna Anna, what actually happens there at the very beginning of this opera in which we're set in motion. All of these things, as you look over chapter 32, will help you to refocus elements that we tried to get to some extent in these operas. And anything you can do to come to terms with, especially the parts that we looked at, I think is really worthwhile doing. In the future, if you get to see a live Mozart opera, you'll feel like you're clued in. You'll feel like you're a part of it in a way that is really quite unique and quite powerful. But I think what Maynard Solomon is saying, that there is no standard set of characters for the late Mozart operas, and I think that's a powerful statement. He's saying that in the early operas that we studied by Mozart, when you meet a stock character, even though the music is gorgeous and the ideas are lovely, there's really none of the kind of complexity that you get in